Oxygen makes up about 21% of the atmosphere. It's a very reactive chemical element and can combine with almost anything to make various compounds. Fire, for example, so useful for heat and light yet so damaging to wood structures, is a vigorous reaction of oxygen with burnable materials like wood or other fuels. Many metals react with oxygen to form oxides. Of particular commercial interest is the collection of iron oxides known as rust. A billion-dollar problem around the world, rust weakens bridges and buildings, damages engines and tools, and corrodes pipes. Yet oxygen is also essential for living things. Oxygen releases energy from nutrients in every living cell, a process called cellular respiration. One type of oxygen, ozone, protects us from the most damaging ultraviolet light in sunlight. You might be wondering why such a reactive element is still present in the atmosphere in such large quantities after all this time. The answer is photosynthesis, carried out by all green plants. Oxygen is a waste product of photosynthesis, which uses water and carbon dioxide into sugars. So you can think of your local park or forest as a place where oxygen is pumped back into the environment. Oxygen is a chemical element with the symbol O. Several allotropes, or molecular forms of it exist, but the three most common in our environment are molecular oxygen, or dioxygen, O2, ozone, O3, and to a much lesser extent, atomic oxygen, O. A solid allotrope of oxygen exists in several colors, but only under extremes of low temperature and high pressure. Atomic oxygen is very rare, except at the uppermost regions of the atmosphere, where the air is extremely thin and the intense sunlight energy can split dioxygen into individual atoms. In the lower atmosphere, atomic oxygen reacts almost immediately with other atoms to form compounds. Each oxygen atom has 8 protons in the nucleus and 8 electrons outside the nucleus. Chemists think of electrons as forming a cloud around the nucleus, stacked up in levels, or shells. The outer shell of the oxygen atom only has 6 electrons, and these are the ones most likely to participate in chemical reactions. An outer shell is generally most stable if it has 8 electrons, also called an octet. Dioxygen, most often just called oxygen, is the most common form of elemental oxygen and the one you're metabolizing right now as you breathe. It's colorless, odorless, and tasteless, although when liquefied at low temperature it becomes a lovely pale blue. A stream of liquid dioxygen is attracted by an external magnetic field, so it's classified as paramagnetic. Diamagnetic materials are weakly repelled by a magnetic field. It boils around negative 183 degrees Celsius, which is negative 297 degrees Fahrenheit, and freezes at negative 218 degrees Celsius, or negative 361 degrees Fahrenheit. So in our environment, it's virtually always a gas. Dioxygen has 2 oxygen atoms bonded with a double bond. This allows both oxygen atoms to have an octet of electrons in their outer shells because 2 pairs of electrons are shared between the 2 atoms. This stability means dioxygen is not as reactive as atomic oxygen, but it's good enough to feed fires, particularly in hot, dry conditions, create rust, particularly in wet, salty conditions, and run the energy-releasing parts of your biochemistry. Enough dioxygen dissolves in water to support fish and other water creatures. In human blood, dioxygen is delivered to cells by the hemoglobin molecule in red blood cells. Ozone in the upper atmosphere absorbs the sun's most intense ultraviolet radiation, although some still gets through and causes sunburn if you sit outside without protection for too long. The ozone layer in the upper atmosphere was the subject of controversy some years ago because certain manufactured gases were destroying it. The world's governments eventually agreed on a treaty called the Montreal Protocol, which banned the ozone-damaging gases, one of the few recent cases in which the whole world worked together for the common good. The ozone hole in the ozone layer is still there, mostly over Antarctica, but it has stabilized. As useful to us as ozone is in the upper atmosphere, it's a pollutant at the Earth's surface and very irritating to the lungs. You can sometimes smell a pungent smell after a lightning storm. That's ozone. But most ozone pollution is the result of other atmospheric pollutants reacting with sunlight. Still, it's now used in water purification at some waste treatment plants because it's safer than chlorine for that purpose. Ozone structure contains 3 oxygen atoms, but the usual dot structures are not completely effective in describing it. A perfect octet around each atom would suggest that 1 double bond and 1 single bond should be present, but both bonds in ozone are the same length and strength. So chemists view the bonding in ozone as a hybrid of single and double. Oxygen is a reactive chemical element present in several allotropes and is responsible for all living things due to cellular respiration, in which oxygen releases energy from nutrients in every living cell. Atomic oxygen exists only in outer space and the uppermost reaches of our atmosphere. Dioxygen, or O2, also called molecular oxygen, or just plain oxygen, is a double-bonded molecule that makes up 21% of our Earth's atmosphere, is critical for the energy-releasing processes in biochemistry, and is produced by photosynthesis. Fire is a chemical reaction between oxygen and a fuel. Rust is a chemical reaction between oxygen and iron, particularly if water is present. Ozone, or O3, is a hybrid of a single and double bond and is important in the upper atmosphere because it absorbs UV radiation. But it's both a serious pollutant and an important water treatment chemical at the Earth's surface.